everyone, and welcome to another lifting episode, Disclosure in the Media. I'm here with Ryan Pollenkarts again, and
Hi,
uh,
everybody.
and we are doing more of the Halo series. We're doing, I believe, the different races of the Covenant. This is going to be very fascinating. I saw the pictures beforehand, and these actually are fit different known race types I've seen as well. The show is recorded on 1/25/24. This is my birthday we're recording it on. Don't really, doesn't even feel like that, but it's
Oh yeah, happy birthday.
yeah, yeah, 44 today. As of actually, it's 11:03 a.m. here at the moment, but at 12:36 or 12:38, that's when it's officially the birth time. So, with that, you probably won't see this until a month or so from this, but I'm just pointing this out. So, I will, at this moment in time, before we get started, open the circle to true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. So, take it away, Ryan.
All right, so we're gonna start with everybody's favorite little grunty boys, the grunts. And they're literally like the fodder troops of the Covenant. So, to give some background to the Covenant, basically the Covenant is a group of aliens that are a religious hegemony. So they're run by like religious oligarchs, and their religion is basically worshiping the Forerunners, like the ancient race that built the Halos. They believe that firing the Halos will allow them to commune with their Forerunner gods, not understanding that they are actually just like a doomsday last case scenario weapon. Um, Humanity and the Covenant kind of came into communication very oddly. And that's because the Covenant uses basically a Forerunner computer to search out Forerunner artifacts or relics on distant worlds, and they found a human colony. And on the world, their like computer basically was like, there are more human Forerunner relics on this world than anything anywhere else before, and that is because the Forerunners left humanity as their like inheritors of the universe, essentially. When they fired the Halo rings. There's still some Forerunners around, but basically the Forerunner Ecumene, the people that were in charge of the Forerunner Empire, were like, well, um, we broke the mantle of responsibility to protect life by firing the Halo rings, so we've lost the mantle, so now we have to pass it on to the next race. So they passed it on to humanity, and as an in Forerunner like script, humanity are considered reclaimers.
Hmm.
So the computer was telling them that there's a bunch of Forerunner relics called reclaimers on the planet, but it was the biological signatures of the humans that were the reclaimers. Uh, when the leaders of the Covenant realized that the Forerunners were giving the universe to humanity, and humanity was not as technologically advanced as them, and also not as evolved in their eyes as them, they were basically like, well, we can't lose control of our empire to this race that we view as inferiors, so we must kill off all of them. That is basically these guys, the prophets, the Sanshayum. They were the ones to do it. I will talk about them more when I get to their races, especially because they have some interesting facts from like the ancient history of the universe as well, from before the firing of the Halos.
Hmm.
But to start, we're going to talk about the grunts. The grunts are also called the ungoi. So grunt is what like human UNSC people call them. But the and even some of the Covenant races will call them grunts. Like inside the history of the Covenant, there's a period where the grunts revolted because for a while they were just being used as slave labor, and then they when they revolted, they actually did a decent damage to the Covenant like empire, and so then they were allowed. They half their planet of Balaho was like their home planet was burned in like glassing beams, which basically just turned everything to glass on the planet's surface. Half their planet was hit by those, and they were then basically brought back into the Covenant, and basically their warrior prowess was then enough where they could be like the front line dirt soldiers of the Covenant that just die in mass numbers. They stand roughly 3 to 4 feet tall. One of the interesting things is almost always you will see grunts wearing uh, some sort of face mask apparatus. That is because they don't breathe oxygen. They breathe methane gas, and this like hump on the back of their armor that you can see in a
Hmm.
couple different things is because they are carrying a tank. So really, they look like, oh man, where's that picture? I lost the picture.
Hmm.
let me pull up a picture.
Of how they look without their apparatus on. Yeah, yeah. That's they're interesting because they look kind of like a mix between reptilian, a normal like small Draco. Like there's these little Draco that come in people's houses and implant them and do things like that. They kind of remind me a little bit of those,
Yeah,
those
that's
little 3 feet
that's
tall ones.
sort of
Yeah.
how they look without their tank on. They kind of look like a weird small humanoid thing. They're shown that they can like knuckle walk on those big stupid hands.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're just the Covenant's first just trash tier unit. If you shoot their tanks in the Halo games, they usually the tank will explode and they'll go like flying and then die.
Oh yeah,
They're
I've done that yeah, yeah.
they're one of their favorite things to they always yell like comical things in battle because they're inherently cowardly, and if you take out their leader they'll just like start running around and they don't know what to do and they'll just like lose all will to fight if you take out like whoever their commanding officer on the battlefield is. um
Yeah,
and one of the other funny things is they either are always just equipped with a plasma pistol or a set of plasma grenades and they go suicide mode and they'll just run at you and explode, or they'll have a needler if they're like a leader of their faction. Apparently, they also play a clerical role within the Covenant religion, where like there's like higher status grunts that are meant to like proselytize to the rest of them. But yeah, so that's basically the grunts. They come from the world of Balahu, and they've been just oppressed pretty much always. Um,
by the Covenant. Yeah,
and
yeah.
on their
There's races like this that have been oppressed in reality that got turned into slaves and grunts. The Orions did this, and other races did this as well. Yeah, they remind me of a turtle-like race I've run into. Also, a small reptilian race I've seen before as well. That they were even depicted in I believe it was a Open Skies. I can't remember the name of the series per se, but the Guardians in the series were more like the other bad guy you were talking about, and then their grunts, they call them grunts in that too, looked like these guys, but in bigger mech suits instead of the backpacks. So they were depicting two real races. The other one we'll get to in a little bit, but this one is they're very similar to some of the races that are out there that are used as like grunt soldiers in some instances.
yeah, these guys are really just like for labor, and that they're also famous because they have a line where you learn how they're fed in the Covenant, which is apparently they go to like a food nipple and it gives them their food because there's a couple grunt lines where it's like I miss the food nipple, I hate rations and stuff. So it's like when they're at their base or whatever, they eat off of a food nipple.
Yeah, that's also pretty creepy. And like I said to Ryan off recording that Isaac probably won't let the food nipple thing go for a month or two. So we'll see what's said in channeling later on because he's the one talking. So we'll probably come to regret it. But okay, uh, we can move on.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next race. These are the Kigyar or the Jackals. They also have a couple sub races, and I will point out the different sub races as we go. So this is the more crocodilian like sub race of them that is depicted more in Halo 4 and 5 when you're playing those games. They have like the quill kind of thing that was like popularized in sort of Jurassic Park with like the raptors when they started putting feathers on them before we like knew real raptors probably were fully feathered. So yeah, they
Mhm.
have like quill knobs, these ones. They have like the weird splayed back like legs where it comes up and then goes forward and then like it's like an S almost. They tend to be so the base jackals tend to have this energy shield on one arm and either a plasma pistol or a needler in their other, and they kind of brace the gun in like the U shape cut out of the shield, and they will just hold that there. And so like the best way to take these guys out in game is to uh, shoot their hand, and uh, then they'll like move their shield out of the way, and then you can kill them a lot easier. Um, Fun facts about these guys are they make up a great like the greatest portion of the Covenant's like raiding factions. In fact, the first contact between human and Covenant at all was a Kigyar pirate ship that was out like just scouring for materials, and human UNSC thought it was some kind of human like insurgent group that had found some ancient Forerunner ship and was using it to like kind of try to take over a colony.
Mm.
Um, and so they fired upon it, and that is where the kind of the beginning of the hostilities between the humans and the Covenant in Halo happens with these guys, with humans attacking these guys thinking that they were human insurgents.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah,
so the
these guys are
Kigyar,
like Draco. Yeah, these are guys are like Draco foot soldiers, essentially. Some of them do have the plume, and then other ones are just raptor looking, but this is essentially like a Draco like foot soldier, essentially.
yeah, so
Even with the
the
shield too. Yeah.
in their hands, like in I'm not in their hands, in their height, they're usually if they were like able to stand up straight, they'd probably be about 5 to 6 feet tall, but they can't. They always have this like hunched over demeanor. So they're usually only about 4 to 5 feet tall at most. They are quite quick. Um, and you'll see this more in the fact that so this is the most reptilian of their sub races. This is a more avian looking one. Still has the quill knobs, and these are the jackal snipers. These guys are like master marksmen. In fact, they're like the bane of people that play like hardcore Halo runs because they'll just take you out in one shot and they like will hit you from anywhere and you won't have any idea where you're getting shot from. So like hardcore Halo 2, like legendary edition hard legendary difficulty Halo 2, these guys are the bane of all your runs, which is just a fun gaming fact. But these guys are a bit more avian in their sort of build. They're smaller, they're less robust. They're still got like a distinct reptilian look and feel, but these guys generally are not on the front lines. They're just kind of there to be sniping from the back. And then the third of their sub races are what we call uh, the skirmishers. They wear small energy shields. They're extremely agile, and they're basically made for like hit and run attacks in the Covenant. They're the most avian with true feathers and a beak, as opposed to the other ones that have more of like a muzzled jaw. Um, and they are usually in like elite Covenant groups for hitting for like quick Black Op insertion missions and things like that. They're super quick. They'll jump around, and they are the bane of a lot of people's Halo Reach runs.
Oh yeah, yeah. The other one, the bird-looking ones, Isaac made a creepy joke through the whole thing. I knew he wasn't going to let the food nipple thing go. There was there's a bird race that popped up in the show Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks. That was bird, and they were called them the AVR, but then they called their world areolus, like boob nipple. That's the joke he was making. So and also bird races in ancient times. Some of them different plumages, parrot-like plumages, feathers, stuff like that, and they were harnessed as soldier types. After some of them, after a while,
And then
extreme ancient times. Yeah.
the Kigyar in general are like some of the worst oppressors of the grunts that we were just talking about, where like within the Covenant service, they'll just abuse them openly. Like they'll like hold food above their heads and like make them jump for it and stuff.
Uh,
They're kind of like the most like we don't give a fuck, we're here to raid and stuff. They don't really follow the religion as much as the rest of them. They're just there to fuck shit up.
hmm.
So
Okay.
the next race is one of the most interesting races. It's the Let Golo. So the Let Golo are not exactly. This is not one entity. These creatures. This is actually a hive mind, and
Okay.
they make two creatures because there's enough of them in a hive to do it. But it is one hive of creatures, and that's why when you kill one of these hunters, is what they're called. The other will go into like a rampage because you just killed half of its colony. Usually, when they're on the battlefield, they'll have a big metal shield on one arm and like a part like it's like a rocket launcher of like plasma energy on the other. To show what they are closer up, they're actually a type of worm.
Hmm.
that was native to like a moon, and the worms would use Forerunner technology as a heat source. And so when the Covenant showed up, they thought they were desecrating the Forerunner stuff, but there was a subsect of the worms that stayed away from the other technology. So that subsect was allowed to join the Covenant, and the other one was genocided, basically.
Hmm.
Uh, these Letgolo worms serve like a big role within the Covenant in the fact that they're how that computer that like searches out for Forerunner artifacts works. Like they can go into there and like work the computer. Because it's so they can do that. They also make up they work a lot of the functions of a scarab, which is like a super tank for the Covenant and troop carrier. So even though they're not making up all of it, it is mostly metal. Where like the joints are and stuff, that is those like worms.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen like there's insectoid races that have like parts they can partition off themselves. There's reptilian sources that will pull attachments off of themselves and put them on people that are worm-like. You see that in Babylon 5 with the Drakh that are in that. That's what they use to imprison Londo Malari, the Centaurian emperor. That's one of the last emperors of Centauri Prime. Watch Babylon 5. You guys are going to know what I'm talking about. They cause chaos on the planet like Draco or Orion's would. With this, though, these are one giant version of some of those attachments. The attachments that would change somebody's personality, like how an attachment would here. With this, though, I've seen like some groups of bugs like that would come together like that. These the size are more like how Draco foot soldiers would be, but with the worm collectives like that, I've actually seen attachments form together to form like a hive mind and form things very much similar to this. They aren't quite that bulky, but and don't have armor. But I have seen collectives of like etheric worms, void parasites, things of that nature that will get large enough to be like a person and actually then can infect the whole area with more of the worms and attach not just to tech but to people. It's mainly people's energy cores, but I've seen that kind of thing before where it's very similar to this. And there's multiple different types of that. Just like they said, there were two different types there, but this it's very similar. These are the ones I've seen aren't that bulky, but somebody's obviously knew somewhere out in space they had these space worm type things. There's also the one I call the pooping worm, uh, where it actually will take a raw material and refine it, and then poop out another raw material a human can use. I thought it was pooping out products for a minute, but it was actually raw materials to make products and food. It's like the coffee beans that they make an elephant eat to poop them out to ferment them. It's a similar process. Worms like this do something similar with people's energies, try to refine it, and other races have used that to farm chemicals and energies off of people. It's one of a multitude of different methods out there, from chemical farming to loosh farming, but some of them are intricately involved in stealing chemicals and from people as well. So and brain chemicals like psilocybin and different neurotransmitters too. So
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, the bulkiness in this is just kind of like a stylistic choice because the devs when they were making the first Halo game
mhm.
wanted a big hard thing to kill. And the fact that there's two of them always whenever you face them makes them hard to kill because they have a rocket launcher on their arm and they're always going to target you. So you have to like the easiest way to deal with them is either you hit them with a rocket launcher or you stick a bunch of grenades to them or you get behind them and you beat them down on their like spinal area because I guess that's kind of where the hive mind for the each like body is.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so that's the Let Go Low. There's not too much else to tell about them. They're kind of
Mm.
just there. They're not intelligent, really. They're just used as like a workforce slash super brute weapon attack, like
Mm.
tank walking tank thing. Yeah. So now we'll talk about the Sharkoi. The Sharkoi don't appear as an enemy in any of the games. They're part of what's called the Covenant Fringe. There's a few races that are involved in this Covenant Fringe. Now, originally, these guys were supposed to be like this is like a little lore thing. Originally, the Sharkoi were meant to be the hunters, but they couldn't code them right,
Mm.
so they became like a lost Halo thing for a really long time. Um, but now they're back in Halo lore properly as part of the Covenant Fringe, which is basically races the Covenant controlled, but they were not deemed either worthy of fighting on the battlefield or did not have a population stable enough for them to be active in like warfare. I'm assuming on High Charity, which is kind of like the Covenant's like spaceship capital thing. There were some working there in different positions, but we don't know. They're really only mentioned in novels now. Like, but it's just a cool side thing. There's a couple other races that I won't go into here in the Covenant Fringe because I don't know them all,
Mhm.
and they're constantly being added on to and amended. But yeah,
Yeah, this looks
okay,
like a Cyclops form. Like I've seen some bulkier Cyclops forms that are similar to that, that are both dimensional and also giant Titan forms that are rock-like people that I've run into. Some are rock-like people, like with two eyes. Then you have some of the Titan forms that are very similar to this, that have like an elephantine like texture like that, texturing feet. I've seen one similar, not quite like this. The heads are more diamond shaped, but or triangular esque, but this is like some of the Titan Cyclops esque forms as well. Some are more human looking with one eye as well, but and larger. Like Chrome, he's 150 feet high, but he looks like Merlin. So it's but this is more of a Titan form, very similarly, not quite the same, but it's
yeah,
similar.
these are roughly 10 feet tall. I think, and they the claws on their hand and like are used for digging. They're subterranean thing.
Mm,
I think they are used
like
a
a
lot.
mole, like a mole.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
Some
think
of them
they're
are like
used a
moles.
lot in like mining for the Covenant, but I
Yeah,
don't
and there's
know.
mole people too. I've run into mole like people like you see also in the Fallout series. You have the mole miner types. I've seen similar things there too that are similar looking to this, where they dig like moles. So yeah, this is similar, very similar. Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the Huragok or engineers. Now these are not a biological thing. They look biological. They while they are kind of biological, but they're not born. Is how what I mean. They're made. They are a bioengineered creature that the Forerunners made originally to basically work technological installations for them. They were found by the Covenant and sort of continued to be used. Um, they float around on like gas tube things. I don't have another picture of them. They like float around in gas um, pouches, and they can communicate through technology and interfacing with technology. They can't really speak. They just kind of make weird noises. Um, they were used initially by the Covenant as like a suicide weapon by basically seeing that they had the gas like bladders to help them fly. They realized that they could like explode, blow them up. So they just strapped a bunch of bombs to them and had to like had them fly over human forces and explode.
Hmm.
Um, but really, what they're for is like technological work. This is one called Virgil that was underneath New Mombasa City in a Forerunner portal area, which would lead to the Ark. It's from the events of Halo ODS 3 ODST, and when the ODSTs get out of the city at the end of the game, they bring Virgil with them, and then this is Sergeant Johnson who is like interrogating Virgil, kind of, and he opens it up and he's like, "I don't like these Covenant. I need you to help me defeat them." And that was
Hmm.
kind of, and then he's like, and he has it lighted cigar, and like the like deep state Oni, like almost CIA operative that's there, who's kind of in charge of this whole project, is kind of like, you need to be careful. This thing is we don't know much about it, and it's quite clearly flammable. As it's lighting his cigar, and he goes, "Hold on, I know what the aliens like."
Yeah, yeah, that's similar. I haven't seen quite the same thing, but I've seen attachments that look like that, void parasites and stuff like that,
Let me see if I can't
and
get a better
animals.
picture.
Yeah, and parasites from other dimensional states and stuff like that. That I have actually seen one similar that change color, like sea aquatic life or like shrimp and stuff like that. But let me see. Oh yeah, let's see. Yeah, yeah, you found a different picture of one of them.
It's like the full body of them.
Okay, yeah, that is more like a void parasite then, because the void parasites look like a little brain with like a face and little hands. That is a very similar shape to some of the other parasitical attachments that I see. And some of them are gaseous, like too. Like if I throw etheric fire at it, they'll just go, poof. I've actually they go poof. So, but the ones I see are very small. They're like this. So, like they'll go after wounds on people, like if they have a wound on a shoulder or back, or they tend to hover around the spine. But the jellyfish like ones will hover around the head, the octopi ones on the head, but those come from different alien races. But this is similar to a parasite that goes around wounds I've seen, like leeches. But this is, of course, an extremely large version of it. But they follow the energetic pathways and causeways, and sometimes they can build up on people's energy like barnacles on a ship. But it looks very similar, and some of them can change colors within the blue and purple spectrum that they camouflage within people's cores where you don't see it as readily. They can go transparent, like or change like an octopus, but it's similar. I'm not saying it's exactly the same, but it's very, very similar in its layout. And they do have multiple eyes on some of them too, like that.
Yeah, these have 6 eyes, and yeah, they're very strange. They're like one of the weirdest things in Halo because they're biomechanical like automata that float around and are like, yeah, they're just very strange.
Mm.
So now we'll talk about the Geralhini or the Brutes. They are a primate type race, quite like mix. To me, they're like a mix of a Sasquatch and a dog man.
Yep.
That's only the thing with them is they are intelligent, but they come from an extremely violent culture to the point where they live in like tribal affiliations still, essentially, where they have chieftains, and then the chieftains will have like little wars, but then there is like an overarching leader of the race who's like kind of in charge. Mm. The Geralhani come from the world Doisak, which is now in Halo lore destroyed when Cortana took over with her like AI empire. She destroyed Doisak because she was like pissed off that the brutes wouldn't submit, which they wouldn't. They're not the kind of race to do that. But basically her point was they're too dangerous to be allowed to like rule themselves, so she just destroyed their homeworld. So the most of the brutes left alive in Halo lore as it is right now have joined a group called the Banished, which is kind of humanity's newest big enemy in the Halo universe after the Covenant. They're a Covenant fringe faction that broke away because they were under a Geralhani chieftain named Atriox. They broke away, but basically because they were feeling abused by Covenant leadership and the fact that they were basically a lot of their units were just being sent to die. So they broke away, and actually they fought like a really good subsequent war against the Covenant during the Human Covenant War that was doing better than humanity in many respects. Probably because they were ex-Covenant and they all knew what to do. And then after the war, as the Covenant broke apart, a lot of ex-Covenant went and joined the Banished, and now their numbers are just growing more and more as more of the ex-Covenant factions break down. They're the main enemy in Halo Infinite's campaign.
But these guys, that's very interesting. I've seen some Anakim lines that actually wear armor, very similar to this, like some of the Guardian types. One we used to speak to by the name of Levick. We don't anymore. He kind of went bad. He kind of reminds me a little of one of these guys, a little bit, and some of his family members, like his son. He had one by the name of Lore Star, and then Loving Nature, and a few others that were in his clan. They had nicknames like that, like tribal nicknames and such. Very similar. But this look at, you're right. This is a mix of a Sasquatch and a Dogman put together. There's like there's a hybrid fusion that it's obvious that somebody out there knew what look to aim at for something like, say, if they took Sasquatch DNA and Dogman DNA and threw them together. They knew what to do, also to make them tribally violent. Also, I've seen Dogman clans that are more primal. That some of them might be technological, but they're very primal. They do the hunt. They'll even hunt like nymphs or rogue fairies, things of that nature, and just kind of rip their bones out and debone them, and then use the meat. But I've run into that where the different clans will fight each other. I've run into also some elemental clans that also fight each other too, and alien ones. But this is very similar to some of the more of the Dogman premise, or more of the Dogman behavior mannerisms that I've run into. Some of them, not all of them, but they're Some of them are kind, but this is some of that mixed with more of the forest people or Sasquatch look. Even some of these dogmen will have weapons like this where they're like just jagged hooks and stuff like
Well,
this.
this is a gravity hammer with an axe blade on the other side. So what this weapon is it basically uses gravity as you swing it to like create a blast of energy that can then like make it do more damage, and then the axe part is if it hits you, it'll just cut you as well.
Yeah, and the SSP, well, that's interesting. The SSP has tools like this and has created soldiers like this as well. Like it goes in more of the Witcher lore where they added the mutagens to make super soldiers. In this case, the like I said with the super soldier, they added like they did. It was like School of the Cat, School of the Wolf, stuff like that, where they added the different traits to them. In this, it's very similar where they've also done false flags on other planets too, where they have had life forms like this. In my own SSP history on a planet called Lystaria, they were running a false flag to call the population down, and it was a very similar race to this, but only picture this, but making a howling, chirping noise to communicate. They weren't as, say, smart as this. But it's a very similar thing. So it kind of had that experience. Halo has a vibe like that too. But this enemy is very similar to that as well. But it's more Dogman, and also Dogmen have been seeded, used as invaders on other worlds too by reptilians and such. So yeah.
Yeah. So these guys, one of the biggest things about their whole super word like culture is they were the last to join the Covenant. They only joined because one of the Covenant basically played the chieftains off against each other and then found one that would work with what they were doing, and then slowly assimilated the culture that way. Some of them never followed the Covenant religion and just kind of stuck to what they did, but they fought because it was an opportunity to show their strength and stuff. But some of them were also just like no, and there was always a group of them that was all against the Covenant. Most of those have since joined the Banished. The Geralhani, however, prior to getting into the Covenant, had nuked themselves back to the Stone Age at least 4 times.
Oh.
By just the fact that they had like fought each other like so much. They had nuked their entire planet back to the Stone Age multiple times. So when they joined the Covenant, a lot of the gravity hammer comes from like weapons that they already had, and then the Covenant added technology to them to make them crazier. But during the events of Halo 2, one of the next races we'll talk about, the Sangheili, were replaced kind of as like the chosen race of the Covenant, as like the main warriors of the Covenant with these guys, because of basically a political move by the hierarchs, which are the Sam Shayum guys. We'll talk about them soon too. And when the brutes kind of took over, it created the schism in the Covenant that ultimately led to the Covenant's downfall, because the Sangheili, or the elites, joined with the humans to try to stop what was going on. These guys also do this thing where like if you shoot them enough, they'll just go into like a berserker rage and they'll charge you in a very like ape type way, because they are essentially just a giant ape. And that can happen, and it happens in Halo Infinite, it happens in Halo, I think it happens in Halo Reach and 2 for sure. In Halo 3, they try to do it, but they're actually kind of squishy in Halo 3, so you can usually kill them pretty before they like get to do that. But here they are in like Halo 2 Anniversary. It's like models. This one is Tartarus, the leader of all the Geralhani brutes during the events of Halo 2, basically made head chieftain of the brutes by the leaders of the Covenant. He was kind of their enforcer as well during this period, and he's killed by the Arbiter, which is like the head, which we'll talk about him when we get to the elites. He was killed by the Arbiter at the end of the events of Halo 2. Cool character. He was also like on the battlefield in Contact Harvest, which is like the battle where humanity first really started fighting the Covenant on the human colony of Harvest, where Sergeant Johnson and this specific chieftain kind of fought each other for quite a while, and they kind of throughout the Human Covenant war kept meeting on planets, surviving each other, and then finally in Halo 2, Sergeant Johnson is there when the Arbiter kills him, and then Sergeant Johnson subsequently dies in Halo 3. And it's kind of interesting that these two characters that have such a central role to the Human Covenant War meet in the first battle and both die right at the end of the war.
Hmm. That's also interesting. The armor you have they have them wearing in this is very similar with some of the Forest People clans have some of this as well, and also the Face Eater clans, the more baboonish types as well. Like that Skullcap, the one is wearing that armor plated helmet there.
Yeah.
That one I've seen that on some of the baboon races. There's one called the Sirinakam I ran into where some of their guards will wear those too. This is very similar to a fusion of a Nakam forest person line and Sirinakam baboon race type, and also dogman tendencies like in the other one. But the armor that I see them wear, I have seen forest people wear some of these before with the primal look, and the skull cap is more like the AI and alien mind control some of the face eater types have, the really barbaric 15-foot ones that also have an AI rod in the back of the head. Those are the ones that sometimes will abduct people and basically wear their face as like a trophy, and that's basically they call them face eater, like a baboon would do that to a person or a chimpanzee, and that's how sometimes they attack people as they go for the face. So that's where they got the nickname one, or the beast of a thousand shoots, or whatever they call it in this part of the country. But if anything fit the wood booger nickname, it would be that. It means wood demon. But they attribute, unfortunately, the people in this area in Appalachia attributed to forest people as well, up in the Great Smoky Mountains and also Great Dismal Swamp here in this area on the way to the Outer Banks. That's face eater territory, but forest people run through there as well. But I've seen that armor on both clan types, but usually on the face eaters, it's more of a mind control cap. Like there was this sci-fi book series out years ago where some alien AI would cap people to control them. This is essentially that, but I've also seen the armor version, like what you're showing here too.
Yeah, so under Tartarus's rule, it seems like the Jerilhani kind of reverted back to having less armor on them in some cases. Not the chieftains as much, but under his rule for their race, or at least the clan that was sort of his enforcers,
Mm-hmm.
they almost always wore like a more traditional Jerilhani like homeworld armor, which kind of is this very medieval looking like harness thing. And in like the wake of the Human Covenant War, they've now gotten more of the armor like this
Mm-hmm.
going on because it's just more effective.
That's more
Um,
on Tumban look, kind of like the Untumban samurai esque
yeah,
included
so
in there.
they've
Yeah.
got a lot more like this going on. Even by the end of like during the events of Halo 3, they started getting more armor. There's still a decent amount like this guy on the right, but there's like their leadership is adopting armor more like this after he's dead. So there's been this idea in the community that this guy Tartarus really was kind of keeping them from adopting some of this higher technology as a way to keep their bit of a warrior culture alive. And
Mm-hmm.
after his death, their leadership started adopting it. And by the events of Halo Infinite with the Banished, they're kind of all in this except for the very lowest members of their society.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So now we'll talk about the drones. They're very similar to the grunts in the fact that they are very ill equipped for battle. They actually don't usually even get armor. They're an insectoid race, and they're kind of made for like swarming enemies as well as doing work on ships and things. They can fly like a beetle almost. They have like wings tucked into their back here. Um, Whenever you have to fight them in Halo, they're kind of like a swarm of them, and you have to like shoot them out of the sky, and it's kind of fun, but it can also be really taxing. Um, they're usually only equipped with plasma pistols, and they're just kind of an annoying little enemy to face that can get you in large numbers, but they're not a major threat. And yeah, they use them on the battlefield, but only in specific situations, and even then, they're not that big of a threat.
Okay, yeah, these are like the mantid insectoid types. I ran into them in Halo as well. Yeah, they can be an annoyance as well. They can be irritating as hell, just like the grunts. But yeah, these are more like there's types of mantids where there's one that I call like the Walmart greeter of alien abduction, where they will greet people as they come on board a ship. But I found out the more centralized role of a mantid insectoid is like a bodyguard, a guard of some kind that they guard the spaceship of some sort. people attribute the brains of an operation to the insectoid, like for an abductions, and that might be true of some clans, but the majority I came to find out very recently are more like bodyguards and guards like police. So this fits that. So
Yeah, these are that's kind of all we have about them. They're not that impressive. They're only like 3 feet tall. They do make like big hive nests though. In Halo ODST, you go like underneath one, and you can tell that like they were only just setting up, but it's already massive, so it is kind of a creepy thing.
mm,
Okay, now we're going to talk about everybody's favorite of the Covenant races, and that's why I saved them for pretty much last. The Sangheli, or the Elites. They come from the planet Sanghelios, and they were one of the founding races of the Covenant. They basically, them and the Sanshayum, who we'll talk about next and last, are the sort of founders of the Covenant. They fought a long war, and the Sanshayum basically ended up using a powerful Forerunner ship, and they created the Covenant as a result of this war because they both realized that the Forerunners were like a god compared to them. They have an extremely cool warrior culture as well as like a normal culture as well. But the warrior culture basically is all based on the sword. So within Covenant service, there's the energy sword, which is famous in Halo as like this weapon that is usually like a one-shot kill. It's just a cool weapon that's always been in Halo. But it the swords of Sangheli society were from before that. They were very similar, just metal ones. And the swordsman tradition in Sangheli culture means that they can't get married, but they can pick any female from their race to breed with to pass on swordsman genes.
mm,
Within the Covenant races, Sangheli that wouldn't normally have a sword sometimes get swords. So they're not like specific swordsmen. Usually those guys get higher ranks. The color of their armor denotes their rank usually when you see them on the battlefield. So blue is like the most basic level Sangheli that you'll find on the battlefield. Then it goes red, then it goes yellow, and they're like a commander of like a small force. White and crimson are usually elites. Crimson and yellow are like honor guard. Like crimson and yellow together are honor guard. And then anything beyond that is usually like a super well-known soldier like Jaeger Adamni, or who wears black and red for the banished, or the silver or gold armor of the Arbiter, who's sort of their like leader at the time of the post-Covenant thing, because the swords of Sanghelios basically took over Sanghelios and made an alliance with the humans under the Arbiter. Sangheli society is highly martial. They a lot of their society is based on castles, almost like feudal castles, where they'll have like a settlement around a castle. That castle will have like a leader who's underneath a bigger leader, so it's kind of feudal in that way.
mm.
And they talk about like in Halo 5 when you're working along the Sangheli in Sanghelios, they talk about how they have to like purge the castles of the enemy from the system.
That's
So this is
interesting. Yeah, these guys are very similar to Reptilian and kind of like Predator put together, where you have the jaw that opens up like that.
yeah, they're the
Uh,
four plate splayed jaw thing.
And also the color coding you were saying before, the white one being the highest, that's kind of symbolizing the white reptilian sovereignty or overlordish type thing, and the different clans, castes, and the different castles like feudal. That's how sometimes Draco society is too. So it's emerged into it yet again. You have some Draco references in there.
Yeah, these
Uh,
guys outside of armor look like this. This is actually the Arbiter, I think, before he's got his armor. Very interesting jaw construction, because it's only the under jaws really that are wide, and then there's a top jaw that is the same, so it's like 5 jaws really. They have 4 fingers, and when they're holding the sword, they got like the 2 central fingers, and then like the 2 other fingers wrap around like thumbs. Um, you can kind of see it here.
mhm.
They are quite they're physically almost as imposing as a Spartan is for the UNSC. In fact, the biggest rivalry during the Human Covenant War was the Spartans and the elites. So elites would elites would hunt Spartans, and Spartans would hunt elites, and it was the biggest rivalry during the war. So much so that in the like John 117, the Master Chief, to all of the Covenant was known as the Demon, and he had a bounty like so high amongst the Sangheili that it was absurd. And
Hmm.
when in the trailers and early cutscenes in Halo 5, when the guy who's Agent Locke, who's looking for Master Chief, goes to see the Arbiter, he's like, "Your people called him Demon. Was that an insult?" And Arbiter goes, "It was an insult to be sure, but it had a monicum of respect." And the Arbiter and Master Chief basically become like the two greatest allies in the universe over the course of Halo 2 and 3. So much so that in Halo 3, the Arbiter would go into a flood horde to help Master Chief retrieve Cortana. So
Hmm.
the Arbiter and Chief, and when you're playing Halo 3's campaign like with two players, the
Hmm.
second player is playing as the Arbiter and the first player is playing as Master Chief.
Oh, okay.
So it's like you can see, and you play as the Arbiter in Halo 2 in the Covenant based missions. So you do get to experience the elites. You can even play as elites in some of the Halo games multiplayer, like Halo 3 and Halo Reach.
Hmm.
I think in Halo 2 you can as well play as an elite. So this is the Arbiter's armor. It's silver and actual like metal. It's like a relic armor, and it's meant to be like a ceremonial armor that the Arbiter wears. Arbiters Arbiters initially in Sangheili society before the Covenant were like the best warrior they had who leads the people. Post foundation of the Covenant, the Arbiter became like a shameful thing where like a failed Sangheili commander becomes an Arbiter and becomes basically the hand of the prophets to do whatever they want.
Hmm.
And the whole idea was they're going to keep getting sent on missions until they die, and then they go get entombed in the tomb of the Arbiters. And so Fel Vadamine, the Arbiter during the events of Halo 3, basically ends that and helps bring the Covenant down. And here he is at the very end in Halo 3 with his energy sword giving like a war cry.
Hmm.
So finally, we're going to talk about the San Shayum or prophets. They have a distinct history before the Human Covenant War and before the firing of the Halo Array. They also had like a space empire during the Human Forerunner War prior. They wasn't a full-on empire. They just kind of had like an independent free trade zone. They were actually considered to be quite beautiful, but by after the events of the Halo firing, they kind of have degenerated into these very like disgusting things. But there are some of them that still have like they don't have the long neck. They they're still somewhat good, but the reason is because they've all but abandoned their homeland, home planet, and the ones that remained on their home planet stayed sort of normal and aren't as Covenant crazy. The ones that left kind of inbred and turned into this.
Hmm.
Um, but before that, they were considered one of the most beautiful races by the Forerunners and humans. They were a close ally of the humans during the Human Forerunner War, and that's why when the Forerunners beat the humans in that war and they set humanity back to like the Stone Age again, they punished the San Shayum by just kind of taking over their area of space, but allowing them to continue on being a technologically advanced society. Um, Now these guys kind of control the Covenant because they used a foreigner ship to beat the Sangheili in the original war that created the Covenant, and
Hmm.
have ever since kind of controlled it. There was the ones that we see in the game are like the leaders of the Covenant, and they are religious zealots, and they have a deep hatred for humanity because they fear news about humanity being like the ones that are supposed to take over the universe. Their
Hmm.
control would fall apart. Um, they're
Hmm.
not Most of them have been genocided as the events of current Halo lore because when the other races of the Covenant really learned what they were doing, they just went and killed them all. We know of that they did have a branch of them that was like bioengineered to be like the peak of physicality that was used as like super soldiers for the Covenant, uh, called prelates. They're in a novel that takes place after the events of Halo 3, that involves the Arbiter and his main ship captain Halfjaw because two of his jaws as a Sangheili are gone. Um, but the prelates were sort of the Spartans of the Covenant, essentially. But you never get to see one in game. They do look kind of cool. Let me see if I can't find a picture of one.
What's interesting about them is if you watch the series Falling Skies with Matthew McConaughey, the Guardian race that's in that is like looks like that. The ones I said were sending out the others, and then like the grunts, and then also Star Wars Attack of the Clones has the geneticists of Camino, the ones that make the
They look a bit
stormtroopers.
like that.
Yeah, and there was a race I dealt with a while back called the Oompas, and I found out that these guys were actually geneticists like you see in Star Wars. They look like this. They even had a K name. It was basically like Ka Oompas or something like that. I couldn't pronounce it. It's a human tongue couldn't pronounce it, but they act in the galaxy. They're somewhere around the Boots constellation, what I understand, and they act in the galaxy as like genetic traders. It's very similar to Star Wars, but in this, they have them of course, be like the one of the ancient races that like you see them here. Also in Falling Skies, they have them be the Guardians, where they were the ones sending the grunts out. So it was actually very, very similarly based. Now going with humanity inheriting the universe in the Stargate SG-1 series, you find out humanity's supposed to be like they call it the fifth race. That goes along the lines with some of the channelings people have gotten over the years too about humanity inheriting the universe kind of thing. It's very similar where they put that in Halo. That particular narrative's actually not as much talked about, but it is floating out there, just like the Ascension narrative or the Ascending into 5D narrative or some of the false disclosure narrative. That's a borderline, if maybe, basically saying, oh, humans will inherit the galaxy, meaning some of the Martian Germans have already conquered some of it. But that can go along the lines of a positive narrative where humans are actually helping races be more creative and whatnot. You can take it either way, but that's where that part of the lore went into. Didn't mean to interrupt that, but that's where that came in.
Well, so this is the a prelate sort of. You can see that they're not as all hunched over and degenerated. That's because they've had bioengineering to kind of fix that. But usually through that bioengineering process, they become sterile.
Mm.
That was actually part of the main story is that this prelate that was part of this main story lost his family because he was able to have one. During the flood attack on High Charity, he blames the Sangheili as the Covenant broke apart for not saving his family when they could have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's working to destroy the same sorts of Helios. This is kind of what a prelate looks like on the battlefield. They're very spindly in their
Mm-hmm.
like this is the thing because most Sanshayum don't even walk. Or if they do, they kind of like have like a assisted walking. So their muscles are sort of degenerated. They use like these hover chair things, kind of like Yoda does when he's like
Mm-hmm.
in Jedi Temple. That's like a boost pack, and then that's again one of those energy arm things. And you can see another one, another character there with some kind of energy saber. But yeah, they use plasma weapons. We don't know too much about them, but we do know that they existed as like a unit in the Covenant military that was meant to be like Black Ops only, super soldier type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of it for the Covenant races. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, and you can do your channel.
Okay. Yeah, I was just told as you were talking about that how that one genetically fixed it, basically corrected himself, but also they became sterile. Uh, some I was just told like the ones that I was pegging degenerated and they genetically enhanced themselves and became some of the genetic traders like the Camino aliens in Attack the Clones. Very similar in commerce as well. Very similar. So that's I was able to pick that up in someone's session that actually had an expression as one of those particular people. So some are hunched over, like have these weird necks that are kind of degenerate a little bit, and then they tried to correct an anomaly and they became sterile. It's just like in SG-1, they had the gray races. They called them Asgardian, and that where the writer should be shot for doing that. But because they had the Orions be or Ori be the bad guys, like demonic ascended beings. Then they had the Greys in it, which were Asgardian. Like again, the writer should be shot for fusing them. They were going along with the Nibiru thing, and they were fusing Asgard with Nibiru kind of deal or Asgard. But the thing of it is, they genetically degenerated because they cloned themselves into oblivion. It's very similar. They were trying to basically compare Ori and bad guy, and oh help me, we've sterilized ourselves. So it's the same bad guy they were depicting in that, but trying to trick people into feeling sorry for one and hating the other thing. But it's the same thing. But with that particular race, I've seen that before, where they're hunched over and they were trying to correct not only a spinal anomaly, but some degenerative lower spinal anomalies, and they ended up sterilizing some of themselves. So therefore, they had to work through that. They're like the Ebens in a way, where they become master geneticists. I believe they're related on some level to the Ebens, but I'm not completely sure there. But Isaac, I know you wanted to come in today. Give me a 2nd. Mm-hmm. He said he was going to go on for an hour about food nipples. Okay, let me see. Here we go now. All right. I knew he would not. He's not going to let it go. I'm telling you now. So we're going to hear it for a month, 2 months, maybe 6 months. So yeah. Uh, just like he calls spatial anomaly, a certain spatial conal spatial anomaly, space nipples. So yeah, like communication spatial anomaly. So yeah. Uh, okay. Just like he hasn't let go of that episode of Lower Decks that we saw last night. He just was losing it. So yeah. Um, right. Isaac, you can come through. Oh man, throat. Mm, right. Ooh, Isaac, can you clear whatever that is preventing you from coming in? Thank you. Do the crystal, please. Yes, I know I have to salt my crystals. So yes, I know. Oh, that's not creepy. Come on. Okay. Yes, the energy is a bit rough today because of different ebbs and flows and anomalies around the full moon presence. This is what happens every full moon. He seems to forget this, but we will move on. The race that the real name of that race is called the Kaumpas, and they actually are master geneticists, like what he said created the race that created the stormtroopers, Camino, even a similar name. The way they are depicted in Halo is 100% accurate. At one time, at one time they were actually quite beautiful to behold. Well, if you're into that sort of thing, but this with that particular race, they did begin to degenerate because of certain genetic abnormalities on their home world. It was a genetic disorder that they thought the way to cure it was to genetically enhance themselves, alter their eugenics. Yes, some of them became sterile. Others passed on the altered genetics. It'd be like, say, if you had a Witcher that became sterile as a result, or sorceress like in The Witcher. Say if you could unsterilize them, for instance, they would have their own lines with those mutagen traits or the magical traits, like the Tartarian world unity or other non-Muggle, let's say, lines in Harry Potter. Similarly, it would similarly happen, and the Kaumpas were able to accomplish this, but ones that needed certain codexes that refused that began to incarnate on Earth to try to receive the codexes a different way that they thought was more pure. In that particular respect, some took on human soul family oversoul circles to accomplish this same thing, which was the long drawn out, let's just say, ass backwards way of doing it. Even though some races, you will find out when humans get out into the galaxy that 9/10 of the galaxy has some kind of we'll just go with the word fetish as far as eugenics alteration goes. And I can't say as I blame some of them for some of the alterations that were done by the Orions. They are either attempting to undo or to fix some things further from back in the line. This is also why you see in Star Trek where the Federation outlawed any form of eugenics alterations, including races that want to join the Federation. They tell them to undo all the eugenics because of Khan, tell them to undo a lot of these. And eventually that is reversed to an extent. If it's a culture and happens to be a cultural thing, they have to keep it in and respect that equality, or in a sort of an inclusivity sort of thing. But in this, there is an actual race that teaches other races how to get rid of their genetic abnormalities. They made it look bad in SG1 by making it look like the Greys had cloned themselves into oblivion, which they have. But there's a lot of other etheric factors involved that involve vampirism and all that stuff, of the Orion Grey factions. But are these Ka Umpas related to the Ebens? Only a little. It's an extremely separated cousinship. It is actually just certain genes that are similar. You couldn't even really tell that they're related. The Ebens have visited their home world a number of times to get genetic advice on things. The Kaumpas are actually superior geneticists, exactly as depicted in Attack of the Clones. They are actually capitalists. They will supply genetics to pretty much anyone who wants a particular alteration or a particular template, and they have like a series of like presets, like you would see an app, or you have have like Photoshop photo presets, or video editing presets, film presets. It is very similar. Like, oh, you want this alteration to do this set of things, just like The Witcher with the mutagens and the Trial of the Grasses. Very similar, that they would apply to a particular person, either to heal them or pay for an enhancement. So this is, and I mean enhancement in the truest sense too. Some people go to them for that. So they are pretty much capitalist. The other races you've seen, like the brutes, the grunts, all accurate in look, the way they look. He forgot to also mention the grunts actually have an appearance of, like, sometimes there's these fire djinn type fish-like ones. They are fish, even though they look like miniature Hellboys. They have like a fish aquatic appearance, and they like to set people's houses on fire. They actually have a biomimetic skin that actually can heat up, and they can actually heat up the etherics around them and set fire to buildings. There are fish-like ones also that have fins that can go from blue to red. Those would be considered more like water sprites, but those are still aquatic in nature, even if they do not look as such. Though even though that one looked more like a turtle. So in this at this point, I can go into questions.
All right. I guess to start, with these races, uh, I'm assuming all of them have some sort of basis in reality, and as you said, they do. Um, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm just gonna ask for confirmation because it's gonna be easier that way, I think.
Mhm.
The raptor like Draco are like the jackals.
Mhm.
The grunts are probably some sort of like force of labor for some sort of Orion lords.
Yes, you are correct. Yes,
The brutes are probably some sort of genetic experiment between Sasquatch and Dogman.
correct. Yes,
That is, yeah. That, I mean, as it was said, it was probably used for false flags and like invasion scenarios.
you are correct. This is what he has seen and other insiders have seen within their SSP times. Yes.
Um, the Sangheili are not exactly as they're depicted, but they're an amalgamation of races.
You are correct. Also the with some of the separating jaws. That's more like vampiric races, plant-like ones, and also the predator and also insectoid races. You're seeing an amalgam of several races they put together. But as geneticists, sometimes the people go to these geneticists and the Ebens to combine some of these traits for foot soldiers. So that's actually still accurate.
I'm also getting that they're not in the races that are exemplified by them in Halo. Of all of them, most of them are negative, and not all of them are.
Yeah. Not all of them are. Some have broken free from this. You also had back in ancient times the Forbosi were geneticists that created another race called the Alarum, which then Poseidon took the DNA of centaurs, such and created unicorns. So not everything was negative, even though some of them got butthurt. The genetics were stolen, like anybody would. Uh, this actually happens where some break away and become civilizations. You're going to find out 9/10 of the galaxy is seeded in such a fashion.
much of these races, like the idea of the whole banished and breaking away and creating their own faction thing, is a thing from within the Orion spheres.
Hmm.
There are breakaway factions from them that are fighting like guerrilla wars and stuff against them even now.
Yes, you are
But
correct. Yes.
they're all like the worker races that we think of as negative, but they're not exactly negative. But they don't
Yeah,
like
not
humans.
all negative. Yes, not
They
all
don't like
negative, like
human
the
beings.
reptilians and such. A lot of Draco, of course, the controlled AI ones are, but there are other sub factions that also even have the plumage that aren't exactly negative either.
There's a some species that's similar to the engineers that are also made by uh the Orions.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
as the Covenant religion is, it's basically just replace Orion with Forerunner, and that they're actually there ruling them instead of like dead.
Yes, you are correct. Well, the tale of them all dying off and becoming completely decrepit is absolutely false. That's what some of the Kabbalist factions wanted you to believe about their downfall here on Earth. Oh, they're dying, but they're really changing some kind of shape or passing the torch. There are also subterranean reptilian races on Mars and Earth. Our Mars has more of a brown look to them and a like a Bedouin-esque type of culture in caves, like what you would see in like the Himalayas and other areas where the caves were up high to get away from flood water. That's why you see some of the hive-like caves that are further up. Though it was actually some of these reptilian forces that created some of those to stay away from the flood waters in the original Great Flood. There's also a one he calls the bluet type race that's actually a mispronunciation of their name. It's Blueth or something of that nature. Human tongue can't pronounce. That they look just exactly like the ones with the plume, but only they are like a federal blue, sky blue color. The ones on Mars are more of the terrain of Mars, more of a burnt sienna, red, brown. They all have telekinetic abilities, telepathic abilities to some extent. The ones on Mars are far more violent, voracious. They can actually down ships and explode ships with the psionic screams they put out. So these are actually very similar, if not the same races that are out on Earth and in the galaxy.
Okay. As for a final question, the race that interests me the most here has to do with these hive mind worms. I'm thinking they're also some sort of false flag in a very similar way to the hunters. They're like a false flag used like enemy.
Mm-hmm. You are absolutely correct. They are genetically engineered. He saw them correctly, but they are actually created by that very same lab we were just talking about. They can be used as false flags to actually make it seem like there's a larger bad guy than there truly is. And even these little lizards that he's seeing flying around are a form of not only false flag, but so are some insectoid appearances as well. But they are a form of like that as well. Whereas even the worms he's seeing that he pulls out of people's intestines and pulls out of people's energies and stuff like that, these are a form of that. So people aim at alien more than your own people here on Earth. So you are correct. You were picking up on them 110%.
Okay, well, I guess that goes through all my questions for today. Any closing remarks by you would be appreciated.
Yes, even in your Star Trek Enterprise, where they show the arboreals in it, those were more of a forest people engineer type that are in it. That also exists where some of the Anakim lines, of course, are spacefaring. Fuma's line are of that. He wanted to make sure that this was mentioned, but that's all. They're also out in space in the same way they're depicted there. But they also have had their DNA used into of course, the creation of some of these nastier types. The Dogmen had it too. The Antiqueman lines and both sides are very unappreciative of the fact their DNA was used. It was stolen. The Orions handed it over to the Kaumpas, and voila, some of these foot soldiers were born. So, and this also our own government here, as well as creating werewolf soldiers, cat soldiers. The Lyran DNA was stolen in the same way. Elven fairy DNA was stolen. Vampire DNA, virus and DNA was stolen to create assassins. All of this. So I do appreciate being on these shows today. It's also ill advised sometimes to do channelings around the times of the full moon. New moon isn't almost too much better. Sometimes in the middle, where the moon is not as obtrusive, is usually the best time to do channeling. Some people think it's the full moon. That is actually a chaotic time. Ironically, werewolf oriented, just to pass a joke over to some dogman clans that were in the area. But this is where I'm at. So I thank you.
Okay, thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, all clans do not appreciate some of their DNA being stolen for that because other races stole it, they pirate it, and then they trade it or sell it to those Kaumpas, and then they have it in their catalog. Very much like those ETs that you and I discovered that take frequency codes and then just kind of neutrally sell it or sell it to whomever wants it or steal from Orions and humans,
Hmm.
military, any of them. I call them basically like the Jawas from Star Wars, except they trade in frequency codes. They're orange and they have kind of like they remind me of Ahsoka with the orange skin.
Oh,
They have
yeah,
kind
like
of like a pharaoh look to them a little bit. Yeah,
yeah, they're like Togruta. It's like
Tigruda.
the
Yeah,
yeah, that's the name that Ahsoka's race kind of has, but she's just like a weird colored one.
yeah. They're normally like green and blue, I believe, in that. But these other guys have a similar appearance, but they're orange. They're shorter. They look like the child version of Ahsoka in from the cartoon
Oh,
from
like yeah,
Clone Wars.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they act like Jawas, where they trade. They have ships that have these frequency codes. I rarely run into them anymore, but it reminded me of them a little bit too.
Yeah, here
Um,
I'll show a picture for people in the share screen.
yeah, they go around trading, taking frequency codes from people. They look like these guys that he's showing right here. They can be annoying, but they have a very similar appearance to these people. Uh, yes, Isaac, I know, not hot like that. That's your thing, but okay. But but I find that interesting. Some of the comparisons out there. You're also going to find. I was told recently you're going to find that 9/10 of some of the obtrusive stuff was a false flag thing, like we were saying right here at home. That it's basically a stagecraft. Like the greatest lie ever told is that they tried to convince people it's 9/10 alien, even though there's multiple galactic cultures here, mining resources, looting, chemicals, all that. Like what I said, there's mostly dimensional things and military stuff doing things here, trying to pass it off as only alien. Like we don't have anywhere close to that tech. We have the exact same thing. So Isaac always tries to emphasize that we have the same shit. So I don't know if you're going to do any game footage or anything like that this
I
time,
mean,
or
I can try, but it won't be long. It'll probably only just be like a little thing of me killing some aliens and
oh,
Halo.
okay, yeah. I didn't know if you wanted to do that or not. Yeah.
That's if this game wants to work today.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just if we can't load it, I'll just edit it out. Yeah. There we go. We got it to work, folks.
Well, you'll get to see some of these races
Okay.
in action. I think if it's gonna work or what's going on here.
There we go.
Let's go into the load screen. Yeah, and then it backs me out. What's going on here?
Yeah. It's being creepy again. Okay.
Hold on. See if I can't do it through like matchmaking, which means I'm gonna suck.
Yeah, the entire community will see you get killed. Yes. Okay.
Many times because matchmaking's harder than the setting I was trying to do.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it is.
Maybe see if I can't do it this way. Halo Reach Custom Firefight. Firefight Classic. Easy. I can't change the map. Maybe it's just that map doesn't work. That's like a really kind of hard one. Let's try that one. See, it's gonna tick down, and for me, it does some weird. It's like it tries to load it, and then it just doesn't load it.
There we go. It looks like it's working.
Yeah, look to the videos are working. I might have been trying to do like a setting that wouldn't work.
Yeah, and it kept crashing. Yeah.
Firefight.
Spartan, we cannot let this area fall into Covenant hands.
Set, start. Tough luck.
Remember Halo Reach's control. Nice. UI gamma. I'm just turning the brightness up for people.
Oh, okay.
This Halo Reach is like in the towards a kind of dark game.
It seems fine. Yeah.
First strike. Overkill. Triple kill. Killing spree. Double kill. Killing frenzy.
Oh, you're not doing too bad.
Yeah, because I have it set to like easy.
Oh. I just heard Isaac go, "What?"
Because I'm trying to get to a point where like you'll get to see like more of the races.
Uh-oh. You literally look like a Spartan. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm wearing like Greek inspired armor. Oh, there's an elite.
Running lion. Kill tactic. Triple kill. Double kill. Rampage. Reinforcements.
Telemetry received on standby. Route complete. Mission ready. Call for fire. acknowledged. Shoot as a go. Out.
Untouchable. Overkill. Double kill.
One probably don't crazy. Yeah.
Reinforcements.
What else do I have down there?
Double kill. Double kill. Double kill. Kill-tacular.
Yeah.
Oh, there you died. Okay.
Yeah, because I blew myself up.
Reinforcements.
He blew himself up.
Yeah, they go suicide quite easily.
Double kill. Killing spree. Double kill. Five enemies remaining.
Oh no, that's not.
2 enemies remaining. Last enemy.
All right.
Lives added. Weapon drop.
Round primed. Call for fire.
Catch on. Game over.
Well, yeah, that was a taste of the Covenant races in battle.
Yeah. All right. There we go. Huh. I like the backdrop on your computer of.
Oh, thank you. That's Tamriel from the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, that actually is pretty cool. That was good. Yeah, he only died the one time, so that the
And that was completely my fault. I wouldn't have died if I wasn't being stupid and trying to stick that guy.
yeah, that's pretty cool. So yeah, I think this is a good place to take this out then, unless you have anything else to add, Ryan.
No, that's it. Just that was just a taste of how the fight goes with some of them. While the grunts instantly kind of break ranks and freak out if you kill stuff around them. How the elites and the brutes kind of keep going regardless of what you throw at them. How those big hunters are easily taken out by punching them in the back.
I just heard Isaac say when you said all that, he goes, just like real life. Okay, so it's like which that's actually he's not joking there.
And you even got to see me assassinate a jackal.
Don't. Isaac was going to do something rude there for a second, but he's been on a roll today, folks. But pre-recording, so yeah, this is a good place to take it out. Okay, thank you everybody for watching this episode of Lifting Disclosure in the Media Halo series. Halo series is chock full of disclosure. I hope you enjoy this series. And now I close this circle with true benevolence with no conflicting agendas as of this moment in time. Thank you, everybody, and bye-bye now.
Bye.